Hey Kevin here, Mr. DIY Dork from DIYDork.com. Today I'm going to show you how to transform this little tiny dresser into something really cool using these belts I found at Salvation Army. So check this out, it's going to be a really cool project. Alright, I got all the stain on the dresser body, and I gotta admit I'm a little bummed. Check this out. I haven't sanded the legs yet, and it's not a whole lot different. It's still kind of orangey. I was imagining it being a lot darker, kind of like on the packaging. I know different woods react differently, but wouldn't you imagine that with that shade of brown on the jar, it would be a little darker. But you know what? I'm not going to sit there and resand it anymore. I'm just going to roll with it. So I'm going to sand the legs, and I'm going to do something kind of cool with them, and I'm just going to go with it and just leave it as is. Once I start getting those all painted up white, it'll look pretty good anyway. So that's what we'll do next. Alright, so before I even prime and paint the drawer fronts, I decided to go ahead and lay out the belts. So that way when I'm like, sitting them on here and getting them all measured out, it won't scratch up the paint and all that. So I had previously, I showed you I had 5 belts, and I decided to use these 4 belts here. I took the black one out because I figured I'd use all browns. But the big dilemma I have now is, like I said, I'm stretching between here, but I'm trying to decide if I want to do something like this, where the belt buckle is in the middle, or if I just want to completely cut it out and just use leather straight across. There's kind of good points for both. I originally was thinking of just using the leather and just keeping it, simple and clean, but it would be kind of cool to have the belt buckles. The big problem I have is that my belt buckles aren't really that great. They're not that diverse or anything. This one's kind of cool. It's got a whole bunch of brass detailing on it, which someone might be really into, but the rest are pretty plain Jane, so I'm not exactly sure which way I'm going to go, but I think I'm going to go with my original plan of just the leather. I think the belt buckles, there's a little bit of cheesiness on there that I'm not wanting to do, so I think I'm going to go ahead and cut them off. So I'm going to figure out how to make them the right length and all that, and let me kind of figure that out, and then I'll show you what I decide. Alright, so what I decided to do with the belts was to go ahead and cut off the ends like I was thinking, and just use the leather part of the belt. I'm also not going to use the belt loop holes either. So what I kind of did was just laid it out across the original dresser knob holes here, and it's kind of found a length I thought looked okay from the one on the furthest edge, the hole from the furthest edge out, and I would just mark the piece. All right, then laid across the other, and then what I did is I kind of smushed it together so that it made a little bit of a handle until I felt it looked about right, and then I took a pin and just marked where the holes were on both ends, and I ended up with something like this. Okay, so that's about the right length, and then what happens is when it smushes together, that middle part of the belt is going to raise out. It's going to be like a handle. Should work out really nice. Then what I just did was I took, let me find it here, the very first belt that I cut had a nice round edge, so I just laid it on the other belts and traced it out and just cut it out with a pair of tin snips. It's the heaviest duty pair of scissors that I could find. And then all I did then was took a drill and I just drilled out holes. I made sure to find center. So like I said earlier, I laid it out against the holes and I made sure they lined up just right, and I just made a little mark with a pin. Then I made a bigger mark, and I actually made a cross mark too, but I drilled through that, that's why you can't really see it. And it works out really well. So what I also have here is a couple of test screws. These aren't the ones I'm gonna use. I think I need to get longer ones. I have 1-inch screws right now, and I might end up needing about 1 1/4 to fit through the thickness of this drawer here. But I'll show you what it kind of is gonna look like. I think it's gonna be a pretty cool looking handle. I have to figure out how to make sure that it bows out towards the center, not offset, kind of like it is right there. But I think once it's actually bolted together, it'll look really nice. So that's that's a pretty cool looking drawer handle. I've never seen one quite like that. And I think I should also mention that I found the marks for the holes in this one. I even rounded off this edge. And then on this edge over here, the other side, I just cut it to length. And then what I did was I just folded the whole thing in half and I was able to trace out the rounded edge and mark the holes for there too, and then end up looking really nice. And you can kind of see, hopefully here, it's just slightly longer. These holes are maybe a ½ inch past where these holes are, so that way when you slide them in, it turns into a really cool little handle. So what I'll do is I'll finish up this last belt, this one I didn't cut, and then I'll start priming and painting these drawers and get them finished up. All right, now I'm priming all the faces of the drawer fronts, and what I did is I laid some tape underneath where I didn't want any paint to go, and I used a brush for the bottom side, and then I'm using a roller for the top side. And it's going on pretty good. I decided to go ahead and use a good primer, a little bit different one than I normally use. A lot of times when you paint raw wood, what happens, especially with lighter colors like this, is the tannins in the wood, the stuff that gives it kind of this, you know, orangey or reddish or brownish hue, will kind of poke through the white paint. It'll soak through almost like an oil. So a lot of times what I have to end up doing is using an oil-based paint. But this time, I tried using a little bit better primer. It's a water-based instead of oil-based. And I've used water-based stain blocking primers before and it didn't work, but this one's supposed to be better, so I thought I'd give it a shot and see what happens. So anyway, I'm gonna put about 2 coats of primer on here, and then I'll put 2 coats of white on there in the same method. And then once it's all coated, I will probably go ahead and protect it a little bit with some type of clear coat. So I'll decide that later. So anyway, let me finish priming, and I'll paint them, and I'll show you what the drawers look like when they're all finished up. All right, now I got all the drawer faces painted white, 2 coats of the good color blocking primer that seemed to work really well, and then 2 coats of semi-gloss white. And I decided to leave them alone. I'm not going to clear coat them. Polyurethane tends to turn amber over time, and then the water-based clear coat I would use, but at least brush strokes, and I want this pretty smooth because I got a really nice finish on here. Okay, then as for the dresser, first I want to show you the legs here. What I decided to do was this upper part that's wood. I decided to sand the finish off so that paint would stick a little better, and then I sprayed them an aluminum color. And I was going to sand and kind of distress this part, but I think I like how it looks, just straight up aluminum, so I left it alone. Then for the dresser body, as you can probably tell, it's darker. What I decided to do is I couldn't take it. That light color just wasn't what I wanted. So once that light walnut stain dried, I put a coat of dark walnut stain on there, and it turned out perfect. Some of the lighter colors still show through, and some of the grain, and then we're getting a lot of the darks as well. So that turned out really awesome. So what I was going to do is coat it with some clear satin wipe-on poly with a rag, probably 1 or 2 coats, and it'd be ready to move on to start putting this thing together. All right, now for assembling the handles, very simple. I'm just using some number 10 by 24 screws that have the combo round head, so it's rounded, the part you see, but then it's flat, so it lays flush against the belt here. And I'm also using some lock washers that fit them. Real simple, just as easy as you'd think. Just take your belt, poke the screw through there, poke it through the hole in the dresser, then put on your little tiny lock washer and then your nut, and then just tighten them up with a screwdriver, pair of pliers, until you got them all in, and that's all there is to it. Real simple. All right, and check it out. Turned out really, really awesome. This is a really nice looking dresser. The dark walnut stain turned out perfect. That's exactly the color I was wanting. And with that satin finish, it just gives it a nice natural look and not the kind of overly glossy look like a lot of fake particle board furniture tends to have. And of course the white painted drawer fronts look really nice. Just clean them up, and then the silver painted legs, bring them up to date too. And then of course the whole thing that sells the whole piece is the drawer pulls made out of the belts. And when you get up close to them, you can see they have a little texture to them. Really cool touch. And of course the bolt heads, I like that feature a lot. Kind of blends in, ties into the legs there. One thing I did notice, I didn't think about this when I was buying belts for this, but I would recommend when you're looking to find the thicker, better quality belts to use, because they hold their shape a lot nicer. See, it's just a nice arc. These top 2 are real leather, the bottom 2 aren't. You can just see how they don't quite hold their shape, especially this one right here. It's a little folded, just a little bit flimsier. It'll work fine, but I think if I was going to keep this myself, I'd go ahead and replace these bottom 2 with a little bit better quality belts. Like I said, I got them all at Salvation Army. They were only $1 a piece, but I wasn't even thinking about, how thick or thin they were when I was looking at them. I was just looking at color. So that'd be something to keep in mind. But anyway, turned out really cool. Very simple project if you want to try it out. And I think this is a look that will never look dated. I think this will always look good.